Okay, here's another scenario to look at for hire purchase. Julia is looking to buy a flat screen TV. The one she wants is 8,399, which is out of her budget. So basically she doesn't have that money, right? Because her budget doesn't accommodate this amount of money to buy a flat screen, but she'd like it. The store offered the following items in their hire purchase agreement. Okay, 18,400, sorry, 1,847 rand 78 cents deposit, and 327 rand 21 cents per month for 30 months. All right, so this is just an already agreed hire purchase agreement for this particular HP. Now the first question says calculate the percentage of cash price that was paid for the deposit. Okay, so this question is slightly different from the one that you had seen in part 1. But to calculate the percentage of cash price that was paid for the deposit, remember now in this time round we are given what is the deposit amount. So it is 1,847 rand 78 cents. Okay, 1,847 rand 78 cents. So since we have that, okay, we will then here take the deposit amount. We will then divide that by the cash price and then times it by 100%. Very, very important. We take the deposit amount. Remember the deposit amount, we are now given it. We are not given the percentage, but we are given the actual deposit amount. So we take that deposit amount out of the 8,399 rand, which is the cash price of the flat screen. Then we times that by 100%. So if we do that, divide by 8,399, we times by 100%, we get a percentage of the deposit, which is 22%. Okay, so we are basically paying 22%. That's this 18,400 and yours 1,847 rand and 78 cents represents a 22% deposit. All right, very important. Okay, I'm sorry for actually calling this amount as 18,000. It's 1,847 rand 78 cents. Okay, then the next question says, for how many years will the hire purchase agreement last? Now we are given how many months the hire purchase agreement will last. Now we need to calculate how many years will the hire purchase agreement last. So all we simply do in order to calculate the years is we know that there are how many months in 1 year. We know that there are 12 months, okay, in one particular year. So what we are going to do is we are going to say we're going to take the total number of months, okay, and we are going to divide it by how many months there are in 1 year. Okay, so that then can give us how many years this hire purchase agreement will then last. And this is very easy. Then you just simply grab your sweet calculator, right? And I'm just gonna because what I wanna do is be able to give you that exact amount. So just to sec, right? But I think you can also grab your calculator. So that means we are going to say 30 divided by 12, right? So if we say 30 and then we divide it by 12, we get a beautiful answer of 2,5 years, right? 2,5 years. Very, very important. To the decimal, we just write 2,5 years. I'm sure someone else would say 2 years and 6 months, right? 2 years years and 6 months. But of course, it's fine if you write 2.5 years. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Let's move on to the next question that is there, and that is, how much does Julia need to borrow after paying the deposit? How much does Julia need to borrow after paying the deposit? Okay. Okay, so remember we had asked how much does Julia need to borrow after paying the deposit. So what we do there is we are calculating the remaining balance. Okay, remember for our remaining balance we take the cash price, we subtract the deposit. So if you remember what the cash price was, it was 8,399, right? That was the cash price. Then we subtract the deposit. We have been given the deposit amount, it's 1,847 rand 78 cents. So we get a amount of 6,551 rand 22 cents. That's how much Julia will need to borrow after paying the deposit. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Okay, because we subtract the deposit from the cash price, that's the amount that Julia will need to borrow. And remember that remaining balance, okay, if we take it to simple interest, it would represent our present value or principal amount, that P value. So that's the amount that Julia will need to borrow. Then let's look at the next question. It says calculate the sum of the fixed monthly installments. Remember here in this situation or this scenario, we are told that 327 rand and 327 rand 21 cents per month will have to be paid for 3 months for this hire purchase agreement. So all we simply do in order to get the sum of the fixed monthly installment is we are going to take the monthly installment amount, which is 327 rand 21 cents, and we are going to times it by the number of months, total number of months that we need to be paying this amount. And look at this, that what we get. We put this in the calculator, 327 rand 21 cents times 30, you get 9,816 rand 30 cents. Okay, that is the sum, okay, the total amount from the fixed monthly installments that you will be paying, right, for that 30-month period. That's how much you get. You can verify this in your calculator just to confirm the situation. And the next question says determine the interest rate on the loan. Now remember, the interest rate is going to be found if we are going to have to basically use our simple interest formula. Remember, in order to use the simple interest formula, A is equal to P1 plus IN. Okay, we are going to have the A value, which is basically the loan amount, which is, we know that loan amount is 9,816 rand 30 cents. It's represented by the sum of the fixed monthly installments that will have to be paid by Julia. All right, very, very important. We had calculated what that amount is. That A value represents the loan amount. If you remember from when we looked at the concept of simple interest, we did indicate that sum of fixed monthly installments is the A value, right? P is our remaining balance. Okay, how much Julia needed to borrow after paying the deposit, which is that 6,551 rand 21 cents. So that's our P value, the remaining balance. I is equal to the interest rate, which we are wanting to calculate. Then N, remember we said N is the time period, it's represented in years. And remember earlier on we actually did find out how many years it is. If we have 30 months, we took that 30 months, we divided by 12, we got 2.5 years. So now we are ready to use that simple the formula that we use whenever we are dealing with a simple interest situation and we want to calculate a certain variable there. So in the place of A, we are going to substitute that 9,816 rand 30 cents. In the place of P, we are going to substitute that 6,551 rand 21 cents. And then 1 plus the I, of course, and then N, which is the 2.5 years, right? Then after doing that, we want I. But remember, I is inside the bracket, but outside the bracket, we have the 6,551 551 rand 21 cents outside the brackets. What we do first step is we divide both sides by 6,551 rand 21 cents. Why? We want to get rid of the 6,551 rand and 21 cents. That will cancel those two, and then we will have to use our calculator to find out what 9,816 rand 30 cents divided by 6,551 rand 21 cents is. We get that value in our calculator, and it's good to not round it off yet because we round off at the end. Then what we do after that is, after that and that cancels, we are left with this 1 plus I times 2,5. Now we can take this 1, transpose it over to the left hand side. The positive 1 changes to negative 1. Okay, and then we can take this value, subtract 1, we get 0,49839. Very important. Now on the left, we are left with, on the right, we are left with I times 2,5. Now, since I and 2,5 are multiplied, we use the inverse of multiplication and we divide by 2,5 on the right hand side. But what we do on the left, we do on the right. Okay, so we divide by 2,5 as well, punch this into our calculator, we get 0,19935, and it's a very long, I put dot 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 to indicate there's other digits there, but I don't want to represent all of them. So I keep those values in my calculator, all right, that I got there. I mean, each and every time I keep whatever value I got, After dividing this, I keep that value. Take the 1 over, I just go to my calculator, I subtract 1. Keep that value that I got there, all right, whatever it is, how long, we divide by 2,5. Then after that, after dividing both sides by 2,5, the 2,5, they will cancel. I'm going to be left with I, and then which is 0,19935, which is fine because I is the interest rate as a decimal number. But remember, we don't want the interest rate as a decimal number, we want the interest rate as a percentage. So we know that what we do to the value of I is, if we want to get it as a percentage, we must times it by 100, which will then give us 19,93%. This, guys, is the interest rate on the loan. It's 19,93%. So do you see that this time round I used the simple interest formula, the formula that I used to calculate final amounts and present value amounts and interest rate amounts and number of years amount. I use that formula to basically get my interest rate on the loan, which is 19,93%. So I just made a note there that you must remember that R is the interest rate as a percentage, okay? And that's what you get on your calculator. But remember, you must follow the instruction of rounding off to the decimal number that is asked in that particular calculation, which is very, very important. Okay, yeah. So here, what we would have is that if we are rounding off to 2 decimal places, remember, if it was 2 decimal places, we count after the comma, we count 1, 2, and then we put a line, and then we ask ourselves the third number. Okay, if it's 4 and below, then that means that number stays the same. But if this number is 5 and more, then this number must go up by 1. That is the situation with this particular number. Remember that if I put the line here, 2 decimal places, remember, so the answer is 19,93. But then if I put the line there, then the third number says to the 3 that it needs to go up. So this, it's not supposed to be 19,93, it's supposed to be 19,94, because this 5 says to the 3 we go up by 1. But remember, if the number is 5 and more, we go up. The previous number must go up by 1. But if this number is 4 and less, then this number would have stayed the same. Okay, very important. And then last question says, calculate the total amount paid for the TV. So the total amount paid for the TV, guys, is we take the deposit amount plus the sum of the fixed monthly installments. We calculate the sum of the fixed monthly installments as 9,816 rand 30 cents. So we take the deposit, we add the sum of the fixed monthly installments, and then we get a whopping amount of 11,664 rand 8 cents. Now imagine, that's a lot of money, okay? But yeah, how how would you feel it if you are going to be paying 327 rand 21 cents every month? Okay, at the end of the day, you do pay this amount of money to basically secure having that TV, okay, which you would have if you had cash. You would have simply been able to at the beginning pay just 9,816 rand 30 cents and be fine. But because you would have at the beginning paid 8,399 if you had cash. If you had cash, you would have paid this amount, and that would have been it. But because you don't have the cash amount available, you end up paying 11,664 rand 8 cents after 2.5 years. Okay, that's how I purchase. Kia, I hope.